you will notice that we have two videos, and that is because I had to stop recording and I was nervous I would lose what I had done. So I went ahead and published that one, and this is the second half of Adler. So maybe it'll give you a brain break as well. I believe this is around where I left off. We know that on page 21 in lifestyle that this is um, kind of what Adler thought of as what fully encompasses your whole life. Plan of life, style of life, strategy for living, roadmap of life, often described as our perceptions regarding self and others and world, including themes and rules of interaction that give meaning to our action. It is the way we think, act, feel, perceive, and live. With the interpretation of these events that shapes our personality. We are proactive rather than reactive, which is contrasting. I know I already did this now because I remember, but anyway, it won't hurt to hear it again. But those faulty interpretations of life are what lead to mistaken ideas in our private logical mind that cause behavior. So all of that is something that you need to understand and know, and those are terms that you need to know. There's also this word that you're going to have to know called, and I used to know how to say it, so I'll look it up before class. It's a German word. It's Gemeinschaftl something. Anyway, it's social interest and community feeling, and it's fully encompassing that idea. And I really, that is a term that I have seen multiple times in on tests and things such as that. So that's an easy term to just memorize and understand. And then we have the life tasks. So these are the theoretical concepts behind Adler's whole entire theory. And Adler really thought we needed to master 3 life tasks, and if those were okay, then we were probably semi-okay. But when we had issues in one of these areas, it caused mental health issues. So those are social, which are friendships, intimacy, which is love and marriage, and contributing to society, which is the occupational task. All people need to address these tasks, regardless of age, gender, culture, or nationality. Each of these life tasks require the development of psychological capacities for friendship and belonging, contribution, self-worth, and cooperation. Like I said, if there is a problem in one of these areas, it may indicate an issue. And we talked about this before in Foundations, but most of the time people do come into therapy for these issues. And the aim of therapy is to encourage clients to develop more social interest and modify lifestyle. For Adler, that's what he thought. They also identified a 4th and 5th task, only alluded to by Adler, so this would be Mozak and Dreikers. Remember, Dreikers kind of came in after Adler and brought Adlerian to the U.S. Spiritual, self-esteem, self-efficacy, and dealing with self. Very, very important and pertinent in what we discuss. And impairment in these areas, like I said, is what brings people in for therapy, and I'd be happy when we meet back together to talk about that a little bit and see what your thoughts are about these being main issues for people. Also, noting that Adler at some point introduced the question as a means to figure out what kind of issues are happening with the life task. And the question in its original form was, what would you do if you were quite well? So I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there. That's the same thing as the miracle question that you'll hear about in Brief Solution Focused, which is a postmodern approach. You note that that's one of the last things we cover in this class. So I just want to keep pointing out that Adler had lots of wonderful ideas that are now evidence-based therapy. He just couldn't quite bring it all together into a really cohesive theory, but there's so many different great things about Adler, and you see how he differs so much from Freud. And it's important that you'll be able to contrast the two and know the differences and the similarities. So that was his question. What would you do if you were quite well? And if the person answered he would complete his examinations at school, if not for his anxiety, Adler would know that anxiety was needed for the person to avoid failure. So that's in your book, and I think that's a great example, and interesting that the question is something that's in other theories. These life tasks are seen here in this wellness wheel, which is something that is used in more contemporary therapy, and we've talked about this in foundations. But this is the wheel of wellness with systemic and individual characteristics, with the center being spirituality. So, with that fourth and fifth life task, you can see all of that in this diagram. And really, that's started with Adler. More theoretical. Oh, there's that word that I need you to know. I'm going to go figure out how to say that real quick so I can actually say this correctly for you. Okay. Gemeinschaftsgefühl. Look at that. Gemeinschaftsgefühl is how you say that. Gemeinschaftsgefühl. I feel like I have to look this up every time I teach this class. But that is the social interest and community feeling are one of his important contributions of Adler's. The importance of being part of a community and contributing to the world. And that word means social interest and community feeling, and might be one of the most distinctive concepts, like I said just a minute ago. Being a part of the world, of the community, and dealing with the social world. Having a social interest, being concerned about others as much as self, to see with the eyes of another, to hear with the ears of another, and to feel with the heart of another. And having community feeling. Making sure that we're connected to community, which will result in healing those feelings of inferiority, making the world a better place. Must be united to act in courageous ways. So, was he an early advocate? I think yes. I think he was so ahead of his time. He was a social justice advocate. It's fascinating to me to think about in this time frame in history for him to be so engaged in activities such as that. It's pretty amazing to me. Maybe more amazing to me than it is to you guys, but anyway. I wonder if I can say it again. Gemeinschaftsgefühl. Look at that. I did it. I'll probably forget by the time I have class. And one thing you know about from Adler that has a ton of attention, and you've heard of this, is the birth order. And it's unique to Adler, and he discusses different characteristics for different children in the birth order. Oldest, second, middle, youngest, and only. Oldest has a lot of attention, spoiled as an only child for a while, as a model child, and is the highest of achievements. Second child of only two is trying to surpass and is often opposite of the firstborn. Amen. I can attest to that with my two children. Then if you have three children, you have the middle, and they're squeezed out. They can be the problem child, but it can also be the peacemaker in conflict families. And also have read that they tend to move the farthest away. The youngest, BB, intends to be spoiled, can go their own way and outshine everyone. The only children have a high achievement drive. They may not learn to share and cooperate and will deal with adults well later. They are in center stage. You may often go back and think about these theorists, like I said, in their own histories, and think about Adler's. Think about how many children are in his family and birth order, and the way that the children were treated. And they are a product of the system, and it depends on a lot of different factors. Of course, we have step and halves and other things that contribute to this. But for the most part, there are some characteristics that do seem like they roll along with this position. Gosh, guys, I'm struggling today, aren't I? And you can read about that in your text, and you just need to know about that. You need to know about birth order and how the characteristics of each one of those roles. And it's not a dogmatic a prescription. I mean, they definitely look at the whole family and look at what the client is saying in Adlerian as to not stereotype. I hope I've been recording. I think something just happened, so hopefully you heard me talk about that. You guys can let me know. I was trying to move to the next slide. Here's a nice graphic for you. Let me just get it down so you can also see that. And just gives you a little bit of an idea of those characteristics of those birth order. I'm struggling today. I think it's because I had to do a birthday party for my child, and I have another family party tonight, and I'm tired. So um, hopefully this is not going to be too boring for you guys. But there are certain therapeutic goals in Adlerian. They're collaborative. They're not. You're not in the expert role. Relationship is based on respect, holistic, and there's a whole psychological assessment that's given, which will disclose the faulty assumptions based on the person's lifestyle. So that's kind of what it is, distorted ways that they assume, faulty assumptions, which is almost like just the distorted thinking that we just referenced in Foundations. We were talking about that. The main aim is to help the client with belonging and becoming more engaged in that Gemeinschaftsgefühl. Really, yes. Community social interest, Gemeinschaftsgefühl. In order to do this by helping clients modify life goals. In strengths-based, clients finds clients are discouraged, they need encouragement, building up confidence and courage. And you can just see how different this is from Freud's analysis, right? It's just very egalitarian, very encouraging, very, very positive, kind of the beginning of that positive psychology, and really even of Rogers' core conditions. But again, I just always feel like Adler doesn't get the credit for these things because there's so many things in one theory and not really organized. A big emphasis on strengths and positive encouragement and courage. They identify these goals for the educational process of therapy, um, fostering social interest, helping clients overcome inferiority, modifying clients' lifestyle to be more adaptive, flexible, social, changing faulty motivation, encouraging equality, acceptance of self and others, helping people to become contributing members of the world and the community. And the way that this is done is through a lifestyle assessment. You may remember a minute ago we talked about a holistic psychological assessment right here. This is what it is. So the lifestyle assessment is comprised of things that we've already referenced. But if you look in your text, you can see all the different data collection pieces that he uses. He uses the family constellation, which is like a genogram kind of, the parents, siblings, and others living in the home, the life task, and early recollections. This is a time when the assessment of birth order is also appropriate. So you would use that in your assessment. And it's a questionnaire. And it's interpreted after the therapist has read through it and gone over it with the client and had them fill everything out. Early recollections is a really cool technique that's used in the assessment. And that's something we may do in school. But there's stories of events the person says occurred before they were 10 years of age. There's specific incidents that clients recall with feelings and thoughts. They're quite useful in getting an understanding of the worldview of the client. And isn't it so interesting? As an EMDR therapist, I find it so fascinating because that's exactly what I'm doing, right? And so again, it's, I guess because I'm trained in so many different modalities, whenever I review Adler, I'm always in awe of the fact that he really uncovered so much. I mean, we do this is where we get those faulty assumptions from those early recollections. We start to internalize the way that event occurred and we make assumptions based on that event, and that becomes part of our private logic. And those are just different terms, but I'm doing the same thing in EMDR. So he just didn't have the bilateral stimulation down with the different parts of the brain. But very, very interesting. And I would say, even if you're not an Adlerian therapist, and you can by all means, this could be your theory. This could be your theory, and this could be how you practice. This could be a big part of what you do. You can also use this in conjunction with something else, but an early recollection is a fabulous data gathering tool for you as a clinician. If you want to get an idea of what someone's early life was like, and sometimes very tricky, gets more data for you than they can actually normally give you when they're doing just a normal question and answer with you. So if you say kind of float back to the earliest time, to the first memory you have, or tell me about a couple of things important in your childhood, sometimes it will bring up things that the client hadn't thought of in years. And again, all of this stuff together is called the lifestyle assessment. This is how you start your Adlerian therapy. And if we were in class, we'd be taking a minute to explore your own Adlerian technique with your own private logic. And we would do an early recollection and do some activities, but we'll do that when we get in class. We're going to talk about all these things when we get back together, and then we're going to practice so that you understand it and we can talk about it. Please make sure you read about the depressed middle-aged man in therapy with private logic, and after the assessment's completed, what the basic mistakes in life were and the structure of the private logic so that you really understand that. I'm not going to take the time to read that to you in here. I know you can do that. Here's an activity you can do that I think we'll also do in class, but we were just talking about this. So take 5 minutes to flow back to your 3 earliest memories in life and write down your feelings, thoughts, and perceptions surrounding these memories. If you want to take time this week at home before we come to class, you can. And if this is a great activity for your own personal growth and something you may be able to journal or write about in your portfolio at some point. So what's a therapist do? I just talked about this. Look, you know how I like to get ahead of myself, don't I? The depressed man, right? I want you to read about him so that you understand his lifestyle assessment and his basic mistakes. And these are the ones identified. So make sure that you've read over that so we can talk about it in class. His depression will help him avoid a life task where he expects to fail, and therapy, his private logic will be challenged. So make sure you understand all of that before you come to class. He will be reoriented and re-educated through therapy, which is stage, I think, 3 and 4 of Adlerian. Therapeutic techniques and procedures. I talked about this already, but you establish first a strong working relationship, and then you do that assessment, right? That lifestyle assessment, explore the psychological dynamic in the assessment, which is the lifestyle assessment, which is comprised of all those different things like the early recollections, can be birth order, and this assessment of all of those. The information is then summarized and interpreted to find the client's life story. It's like similar to an intake with clients. The information is, like it says at the bottom of the notes, is summarized, interpreted. I think it's like an intake. And that is where the clinician will look for themes and look for successes and failures, and at some point challenge that and reorient them and re-educate them so they can go out and face the world in a new, healthier way. Back to the normal view, normal. Okay, great. There are 4 phases of treatment, which I just really mentioned to you already. And that relationship is really important. You're fostering that social interest, helping them overcome inferiority, helping them change basic mistakes, shifting motivation from self to community, and helping the client feel like a life equal in this relationship. That lifestyle assessment and analysis are completed, it's interpreted, insight is gained, reoriented and re-educated, and then you go on your merry way. There are a ton of notes under here that I think you will find interesting and different types of interventions that you will need to know about. We have an excellent case of Ruth for you to continue to learn how you would actually do Adlerian. I think one of the things that bothered me the most about school when I was in school was that we learned about theory, but we didn't learn how to do it. And I wanted to know, how do you take this great information and make it work with a client? So that was a long time ago when I was in my master's. Gosh, it's almost a long time ago. 14, 15 years ago, right? So it was different. And so this is really, really important, I think, for you to understand, okay, this is what happens if a client came in and you were Adlerian, what would you do? So here's the presenting problem for the case of Ruth. And I'm going to skip this a little bit because we're going to do a lot of this in class. Just make sure to read over it. You understand the case of Ruth, and we're going to talk about that in class. why children misbehave. So this is a really important part of this theory.
Dad's taking notes.
Okay, Dad's taking them to school. So Adler's theory has been widely used with kids. Adlerian play therapy, like your awesome article, and understanding how this applies to kids. And he came up with, Dreikers actually came up with 4 reasons why children misbehave: to get attention, to get power control, to get revenge, or to display inadequacy. So those are really important, and you need to read and know about those. And then multicultural considerations. We're going to do our Adlerian role play when we're back in class together, so you don't have to worry about that. But multicultural considerations is great for diverse pops. It focuses on social context, community, social interest, right? It's very, very action, social justice, action driven. So there are some real positives for this. And then there are some shortcomings as well for diversity. Of course, the traditional birth order could be not relevant in a lot of families. So there's some drawbacks with certain cultures. People who may not want to explore the past at all, and that might be problematic for them. And some other things that you need to know about. I would also read over Stan and Gwen, just so you really understand this when we're ready for class. And we did it. We're done. And this was choppy, guys. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get it down.